is now 6:30. I'd like to bring this meeting to order. Stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call. Dean Foreman, Gary Stallinghorn. Here. John Cabello. Here. Tom Sinkowitz. Ted Demain. Adrian Ferrari. Linda Fedora. Here. Keith Shield. I would like to extend voting rights to Linda for the evening. With also the note that should anyone else arrive, whether they're late, regardless of how late they are, that the voting rights will remain with you for the entire evening. All right, first order of business is to review the minutes from the May 3rd meeting. Anybody have any questions or comments about the minutes or corrections to be made?
I move we accept the minutes.
We have a motion on the floor to accept the minutes for the May 3rd meeting. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion to accept the minutes for May 3rd. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. New business is to act upon the suspense list presented by the tax collector, Kelly Vincent. We would like to.
I am here. I'm assuming you all got this last week. Kelly emailed it to you. So I'm looking for you guys to approve my suspense list as
I can get the minutes.
as my yearly suspense list. This year it's $170,691.58. And obviously these are all still collectible. I just need to write them off my list. And these are people that are either refuse to pay, can't contact them, moved out of state, and you'll see some real estate, and those are my tax sales. If we don't sell them, we're allowed to put them on the tax list every year as a write-off. They're still held in the auction, like someone could always try to, put a bid on it, but they're properties that people don't want nothing to do with, so I can put them on the suspense list.
So once that, you have the tax sale, that's just one, that was my question.
I'm sorry?
The ones that, my question was, I think you just answered it,
The real estate, the tax sale, yeah.
tax sale.
Yeah, so they're the ones that never sold.
So that, they never sold.
They never sold. So these are there's some that have sold. In the back years, we didn't get enough money to pay them off, so the back years we can write off. And some of them are ones that never got sold at previous tax sales, but the front, we can always keep writing them off yearly. I say write them off, they're still collectible,
Are they still available to go to another tax sale?
No, but they can contact our attorney because they're still being held by him. So someone can make a bid on the ones that didn't sell at the auction. So we're not going to ever put them back up, but someone can bid on them through the attorney now, anytime. Anytime. And if you know anybody on the list, you can please tell them to come see me. Because there are some names on there that I'm sure you know.
Mine wasn't on there, so I didn't care.
That was fire owner, and then I read it, and they went defunct. That's it, and there's new owners, and we never got money from the fire owners for personal property, and there's nothing I can do. They're a defunct company.
Where are they?
Well, Wendy's,
Oh,
it was the prior owner of Wendy's that and then they never file their declaration to say they're out of business, that business, so the assessor keeps putting them on, and they can't take it off till they, and then here we are. I don't know, which we'll never see that.
I make the motion that we send it on its way, however it's got to get worded.
Can you repeat the motion, please?
Don has made a motion. Basically, to accept his presentation.
Yes, yeah, that'll be a presentation. You can go forward with it.
We have a motion on the table to accept the presentation by the tax collector. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to accept the presentation by the tax collector. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries.
Thank you.
You're welcome. The next item of business is to set the mill rate for fiscal year 2022-2023. Based on the vote that took place on Monday night, where everything was voted in favor. We'd like to open it for any questions or comments before we move to a motion. Okay.
The only comment I might have in that category is when I looked at the agenda and I looked at it online, the first two pages are dated 5/17, but after that they're all dated 5/3. The numbers all look right. Just, that's the only minor issue.
I think it's probably just a matter
It's
of
just a
updating it
matter
on
of-
the website.
Just a matter of a couple of keystrokes.
All right.
Other than that,
If there are no other questions or comments, I would entertain a motion that we set for fiscal year 2023 mill rate at 28.03.
Make a motion.
Okay. Do I have a
That's
second?
for fiscal year
2023, yes. Do I have a second?
Second. Oh.
okay.
We have a motion on the table to set the mill rate for fiscal year 2022-2023 at 28.03. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion carries. Next order of business is to review the procurement policy for the town. You should have that in front of you. Linda, do you have a copy of that? Okay.
Thank you.
This has been a bit of a discussion for a couple months now, but had to be tabled because of our involvement with the budgets. One of the things that I think jumps out at me was first adopted in 1994, and then it was amended in 2009. I believe that certain costs have risen to the point where we need to make some adjustments. My first thought is on the first line where it says purchases of $7,500 or more. I think that number should be raised to $10,000. Does anybody else have any thoughts on that? At this point, I would like to recognize the first selectman.
Thank you, sir. I wanted to ask if you've received all the sections for the procurement policy, but also the state statute. And just basic extra copies. thank you for allowing me to pass it forward to you. The only thing I would say would be at this point, where there is a question of who was allowed to set a rate and at what rate it would be, I would like to ask if you would defer the vote on this until the next meeting. I'll get a legal opinion about this, because the question comes into the state statute as to this, who you're allowed to make a change to. According to that, it's alluding to the fact that the state of Connecticut has a general statute that says that the Board of Education is set at 25 grand, and that's it.
Right.
And then the town, obviously, you would have an opportunity to change the numbers.
But it says no greater than 25 grand. It says no greater than.
Correct.
Yeah. I want to reduce it.
I understand that. But again, I would prefer to wait for the legal opinion, and when that comes out, then you can, make your motion as to who and what.
But we should be able to make a decision about the town side.
Oh, yeah.
But that's what's in our agenda.
I would,
is to-
yep.
is to
And I would
have
say
the
that
town-
on the high end there, that 7,500 is listed as the high end. As we spoke the other day, there is 2 areas, if you take a look down in section, or up in section 2, where it talks about between 2,000 and 7,500, and the highest number is 7,500. So you'd have to make that change to both. Okay. Thank you.
On that $7,500, what's the number that you have to come to us to approve? You can spend up to...
Oh, the town charter currently says it stands, if we were to say, well, this is for an item that is not budgeted, that is over 10,000, between 10,000 and 50,000. We have to come to, first the selectmen would vote on bringing it forward to the Board of Finance.
Is it at 7,500?
No.
It's at 10, okay.
Yep.
So it's just stuff that's...
Yeah.
Whatever. Budget,
Right. So it could be in the budget it could be actually in the budget for a certain amount, for like 5,000. We'd have to obviously talk about that second section, getting some written documents. Whereas versus a sealed bid would require anything over the 7,500 currently. So if it's in the budget, it's over 7,500, we'd come through a bid process. I think if you take a look at what we passed for a budget this time, we're talking about items that, as using an example, if we're going to build our garage over here, and we have to come collectively as here's all the different bids from all the different companies to put it together, we'd have to go through a bid process right now for that, separate each one. Which we'll do. It's just a matter of have an understanding of how that bid process, sealed bid process would work. So if you were to raise it to 10,000 or 15 or whatever you desire, then that is going to be what we'd have to live with the sealed bid for each section of that building. Okay?
The only recommendation I would have, Kevin, would be, the jobs that do go out to bid, either in the charter or in policy or both, that bid bonds be required.
Or
Can
up
you
to
call-
what price?
And whatever you're bidding now. Let's say we change it to 10 grand.
So, let me see if I can get clarification.
Any job going out to bid should have a bid bond.
Okay, but that's not just jobs, that's also purchase of items, right? So if I'm purchasing a piece of equipment, I'm not going to put a bid bond on a purchase of a piece of equipment.
True.
Okay,
I'm talking more like labor and material type.
all right, then is it clarified in that statement there? If not, we'd have to probably modify that to do that as well.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
But at least to cover yourself.
Does anybody have any thoughts or questions that they want to put forward at this time?
supersede the policy.
Okay, so that's,
And maybe the charter too, I don't know.
all right, so what, one thing that we could actually act upon tonight is changing.
Just changing the numbers.
Yeah.
Just changing the numbers. I mean, that was just a recommendation for Kevin.
Mhm. Yep. Well, I will entertain a motion on the numbers, if somebody has one that they would like to make.
I see we could raise it to 10,000
Okay,
in these two lines.
okay,
That would be right there.
all right. So,
I'll
motion.
make that as a whole thing.
Okay, so a motion has been made that we change the first two lines to raise the top number in the first section of $10,000 or more, and in the second section to be purchases of $2,000 to $10,000. Is that correct? Is that what you're saying?
Yep.
Okay. All right, so we have a motion on the table to raise the dollar amount of purchases on lines 1 and 2 to $10,000. Do I have a second?
Now, before we get that far, that would require an informal bid, informal approval relations. Okay.
All right.
I'll second.
Okay, so we have a motion on the table to raise the purchase amount on lines 1 and 2 to $10,000. Do I have a second? I do have a second from Linda. All right, so we have a motion to raise the amounts of $10,000 to $10,000 purchases on both lines 1 and 2. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 And that motion carries. All right. Next order of business is to review the financial report for the Board of Ed. In speaking with the superintendent, he informed me that regretfully they would not be able to send us a representative tonight to answer any particular questions, but if we had questions that we wanted to put forth, that they would certainly respond to them as quickly as they possibly could. If we would like, if anybody has a question that they would like to enter into the minutes of this particular department, I would entertain them. I would like to begin by asking, first of all, on page 1, where it talks about extracurricular activity salaries, they still have a balance of $55,000 that they haven't spent this year, and I'm wondering if they're actually going to expend those monies or if that's going to be part of their underruns. The second one is on the same page, a similar dollar amount of $62,000 on para subs. Their encumbrance is only $239, so they have a balance right now of $62,000, and I want to know if that is also going to be going to their underruns this year. However, if you look at line 321, they have an encumbrance of $114,000, and they've already spent on that line, and that's going to, I wonder how that's going to impact them.
Well, I don't have a report.
That is personal instruction services. And then pupil services, they're going to have another deficit of like $30,000 there. However, student transportation at this point, they're looking at a balance of $520,000. I want to know how they're going to account for that, if they have any outstanding bills that haven't been paid, because that's quite a large number. As they haven't spent, that's what it's left.
Would they do that? Would they do that? Would they do that on a transfer? We do. Between now and the end of next month.
But that's money they haven't spent.
Right.
It's almost half
Right.
$1 million.
Right. We must have money in some of our accounts that we haven't spent yet, so.
Well, that's my question.
Yeah, which account that they overspend and underspend.
Well, I can tell you another one. they haven't received all the monies that they've expected on tuition, and they're in the deficit of $132,000 right there that's outstanding. So those are a couple of questions
Am
that
I the
I've...
only one that doesn't have a copy of that?
No,
Me
No,
too.
I don't have one.
it was emailed out to everybody. I did print out an extra one,
For me?
but it's 58 pages long. So those are a couple of questions I would have. If anybody else has any, what we could do is we could funnel them to me, and I would send them off to the Board of Ed, to Paul, and to Ron, and to Christy, and to Mike, to hopefully get responses on this, because, you know, the year end is coming up close, and we've got some numbers that are really kind of not following the trend of spending or income, and I'd like to get some sort of clarification on those. But if anybody else has, when you get a chance to look at the report that was emailed, if you have questions, you can send them to me, and I in turn will pass them on to the 4 people I mentioned, and hopefully we get responses in a timely fashion. So is everybody comfortable with that? Okay, at this point, I will open up the floor to citizens' participation. If we have anybody that would like to ask a question or voice an opinion, or bring something to the table.
Thank you.
And you are?
I'm Kevin Pennington.
Okay, thank you.
You were mentioning some questions you had with the Board of Education, and I believe that I think this would be a great point to continue on the discussions we've had recently with the Board of Education, Board of Finance, and the town. So I would suggest that as soon as you're able to get the minutes, and any other questions that come through, that funnel through to you, that we can bring those up at our next meeting for follow-up, which I'd like to have sometime the first week in June.
Okay.
All right. So now for the shameless plug. Well, it doesn't belong to the Board of Finance, but it is a shameless plug. So I will say that reminder that this weekend, Town of Plainfield is doing a food drive, monetary donation for the project pen here from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Anybody that wishes to come in to donate or help would be appreciated. So thank you very much.
I have something that I should have maybe brought it up under new business.
Okay.
But, I don't know how to present it, but I think the Board of Finance needs a subcommittee to look into, we have no bylaws. And last month when the vote kind of went back and forth between the alternate and the member, you know, Kevin did some investigation at my behalf because I questioned. And the town attorney has suggested we check our bylaws. And we have.
I think that's a great idea. I would be willing to, well, first of all, it's not under, we don't have it under new business, so I will accept the motion that we add to new business, a discussion about bylaws and setting up a subcommittee. Do I have a motion for that?
Yeah.
We have a motion to add to our discussion on setting up a subcommittee to discuss bylaws for the Board of Finance. Do I have a second? Okay. All right. All those in favor of adding this to the agenda for the evening, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay. All right, so let's begin that discussion. I think that's a great idea so that we can avoid confusion that we had a couple months ago. I think that's in addition to bylaws, some responsibilities. So there could be, you know, like if someone fails to show up on a consistent basis, how do we address that? What is our authority basis? I mean,
So how many members in the subcommittee, because 3 is a quorum?
Okay. Well, do we have volunteers for that? All right, we have one volunteer.
Look at me.
Oh, I part of the process.
Yeah, it's part of the process, but, you know, and then also looking at the state, you know, read the book on the state finance committee, board of finance members, that also spells out our duties.
Would you be willing to look into that?
I can, I'll attempt it, yes.
Okay. Well, we have one volunteer for being part of the subcommittee at this point.
We could have a subcommittee of one, couldn't we?
Well, I don't see why not, really. If you're willing to do, you know, come up with some.
Well, I'm going to put an appeal for somebody to maybe volunteer because, you know, this isn't sour grapes about, oh, I didn't.
No, I think it's.
You know, there's some real logistics going on.
I mean, it's a precedent that was, you know, that we hadn't encountered as a collective group, and so we need to be ready for this for not only our future.
Understand this is that we weren't really voting on anything significant, you know, that was going to be a long-term change.
Right.
And the person that actually came in happened to be the same party, so there wasn't any real conflict.
Right.
There had been an important vote. But, you know, I could support, if that's the way the town has done it, I could foresee, you know, where do you draw the line? Somebody walks in 5 minutes before the meeting ends? Or because somebody in the participation is calling them and saying, you better get down here, the vote's gonna go the wrong way, you know? I mean, and, yeah, and then what happens? You know,
Well, I
I mean,
think-
they're not even informed, you
Yeah.
know?
Well, I think that if they're not here for roll call, they're here as an observer from that point on.
But you know, I think Don brings up some really valid points. It's like, what are the other towns doing? I mean, if the town attorney said, check your bylaws, that sounds like something maybe we need to have.
Would that mean that bylaws is like what our charter says, or?
I think we look into the charter, the thing that.
I didn't see anything in the charter for that.
There's nothing in the charter about, let me phrase it. The one thing that's in the charter is that an appointed, a person that's part of an appointed position, if they are not fulfilling their obligations, they can be removed for cause.
Right.
The difference is when you have an elected official and they're not participant or not following whatever guidelines we may have, then we have to set up something, some sort of policy, procedure, whatever you want to call it, so that we know how to address these things in the future.
I'm sure if we got this issue now, I'm sure many other people would go to the same thing. So, something we look into, maybe do something more.
Well, I think what would be helpful is to have, over the next month, is have ongoing conversations, you know, brainstorming, what do you think about this scenario, how do we want to handle it, and then come up with some suggestions, and so that at our regular June meeting, we can talk more about it in depth, because I do think it's a very important tool for us to have.
Just that we have July off, so you can do it in July or
Okay, well, we have at least one individual that would really like us to meet in July, so that's, you know. Anyway. All right, so why don't we do this? Why don't we do some research, come up with, look at what some of the other towns are doing, have bylaws with their Board of Finance in particular, and we put together some sort of, have something to discuss in detail at our next meeting, and we'll make that part of our agenda. Good with that?
go for it.
I have one more discussion on the next meeting.
Yeah, we'll plan for more discussion on this at our next meeting, and it'll be part of our structured agenda. So that we have some details, and we have some research to go on. All right. If there's nothing else, then at this time, I will entertain a motion that we adjourn.
I'll make the motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. We have a motion to adjourn. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.